Right, welcome back. Now this is going to be part 7 of Project Bonneville. This is the extended series of little videos to upgrade and improve Penny's new Triumph Bonneville SE. We want to put a TEC bike parts 2-in-1 stainless system on it for a couple of reasons really. One is looks, because the standard system looks a little bit Grandpa Joe, doesn't it?
And I'm not a grandpa.
Not a grandpa.
No.
2-in-1 looks great, sweeps up at the back, and it's the weight as well. We've done some weighing up here, I'll show you in a second. The standard system weighs something mad, I think it's just a smidge under 12 kilos. That's the full system made up, and the aftermarket system weighs just 4 kilos. It's marked on the paperwork as 5, but I've put it all together and I've measured it, and it is indeed just 4 kilos. That's all it weighs, including all the fasteners. So that's a massive saving in weight of 8 kilos. We've then got the 2 on the shocks because they weigh 2 kilos each and the original ones weighed 3, so there's 2, so there's 10 kilos we've taken off the bike. That's a considerable amount of weight. It's a 205 kilo bike dry, so we've now got a 195 kilo bike. It makes a difference, it really does. And obviously the suspension is going to be more reactive, the tyres are better grip, they're better than the factory ones. This should be far improved over a standard Bonneville, and I want nothing less for my penny pistol. Should we get stuck in?
Yeah. Alright,
stick around, stay tuned, let's do the exhaust. Okay, the TEC bike parts 2-in-1 exhaust system. You get it in a big box, you unbox it all, you get instructions with it which are extremely easy to follow. They really are, they're well written, there's all the right warnings in place, and when you read the instructions they are worded and constructed as such that when you equate it, you read them all through twice, then put them down and then go to the bike and you'll, oh yeah. It's actually easier when you get to the bike and you start doing things than it is when you read through it. So read through it, understand it, all things that you fit that you've never done before, even if you've got mechanical ability yourself, it doesn't matter, read the instructions anyway, because the people who make those instructions care that the product is done properly, certainly if they're going to warranty it, which they do. Right, so I'm not going to show you taking it off. As you can see, we've taken the old contraption off, and I've got the bike to a point where we can just reassemble it from there. And the final job with taking it off is just the ring gasket, which I didn't do when I was doing it at the beginning. Now the point here, exhaust, hang on. Right, so what I've done, as you can see, I've taken off the sprocket cover, and you need to do that because you have to take this off. That's held on with 2 bolts and this pinch bolt that goes around the end of your swing arm pivot. So to take that out of the way to get to that bolt down there, which is, that's the mounting bolt there for your exhaust. You're going to be using that in a minute to mount the link pipe on, and obviously you can't take that out with that in place because you can't get a tool on it. It sits right behind there. So that's why that's free, ready for reassembly, and that's a big fat Torx. Is that a Torx? No, it's an Allen bolt. Excellent, love it. So taking the old headers off, and what I've done as well is I've released all of the oil cooler bolts, which is just 3 bolts, 3 little bolts there. That releases the oil cooler. There's 2 in the front there and 1 at the top up here. And you need to take the horn out of the way as well because you need to get access to these wires, which is the lambda sensors or O2 sensor wires. Now when you take the O2 sensors out, obviously, you know, up here for thinking, use your brain, mark them. Just put left and right. Before you do anything, before you undo them, before you take the lambda sensors out, mark them. Now don't just mark left and right, because when you've taken them out, obviously they plug in to the loom up here. So up here, the nice thing is, the way that Triumph have done it in a very common sense way, they give you plenty of loom up here that pulls out. So that's the female side of the plug for the right. R for right, R for right. So that one will plug in there when we're ready to do it. And that's the left one, that manages to come out the front. There's all this lovely slack, you don't have to take the tank off or anything. So don't worry. That's the left one, and when we put the left one in, that will match accordingly. Now, it's very important to put the correct lambda sensor or O2 sensor in the correct side. If you don't put them, if you get them cross-matched, if you get them mismatched wrong side, you get an engine fault light on the top. Then you'll have to go tail between your legs to the dealer and ask them to put that light back out by putting it on the Triumph auto scan system, which is just embarrassing if nothing else and a pain in the arse. So mark them both sides of the plug before you unplug them, then you won't forget which way they go. There's a note in the shop, in the instructions, that says that there's a piece of red tape up inside here, which is the one you put the left one on. It doesn't matter, as long as you put the correct side to the correct side they came off of, that's fine. And I can see a little piece of red tape up there, it's no problem. Right, so that's those out, pipes out, everything cleaned up, everything ready to reassemble. I've taken this foot peg, obviously the other side, that's the rear foot peg, I've taken the other side and just put it back on the bike as it is, but this side will be reassembled when we put the exhaust because it goes in all at once. So that left hand side is kind of finished with, all bar one thing which we'll do at the end. And the last bit of disassembly is in here. I've done the other side, and this is the old ring gasket in there, which just seals. You just take that out because you're going to get two new ones. So don't reuse these. With my bike, when I took my exhaust off to paint it, I did reuse the old ones. They haven't leaked, they're absolutely fine, but this bike's done 7,000 miles and that makes a big difference. When I took that exhaust off, it had only done about 300 miles. It's a big difference. It hadn't even bedded in yet. But these I'm going to put new ones in, and you get them in the kit anyway, as you do all the fasteners and screws, everything you need. Okay. Then we are now ready to assemble the system. Okay, let's get going. Right, first thing I want to do is talk about your little bag of goodies you get with it. In the bag you get two new exhaust washers, which are going to fit in a second. You get the two springs which hold the pipes together, a couple of pieces of tubing, I'll come to what they're for in a minute, and these are quite important now. If you've got a carburetted bike, these are the plugs, and that there is your O2 sensor hole. That's where your O2 sensor is going to go. If you have a carburetted bike, then you don't have them, so you just fit those in there, and that blanks them off, and they're supplied with it. But in this case, Penny's bike is fuel injection, so we don't need those. They'll be going in the stock box. Don't need them. Get those out of the way. Okay, so to fit these two gaskets, simplest way I like to do it is use, for all exhaust assembly, I like to use black silicon sealant. It's a high temperature silicon and the perfect material for the job. And now this isn't really to seal these, this is to prevent them from falling out when you're assembling it, because you're missing it around, you're mauling it about. I just like to put a big old sticky mess of it on there and a little bit around that edge, and just pop them in with a bit of silicone on the back, and all that does is hold them in place. It's not to help them seal, they're crush washers, they'll seal on their own. In fact, they'd seal absolutely bone dry. You don't need to do this at all, but then it's a bit of a pain because they can fall out just when you're trying to assemble the thing. So just wipe a little bit of it round, just to use as a kind of temporary glue, and it will set quite hard, and or like a rubber rather, and it will stop them falling out, so that when you go to reassemble, or when you go to assemble the exhaust and put it in there, they'll be nicely seated and not cockeyed, causing a problem. Just make sure they're all properly seated in there. Okay, so when you assemble this, the first one to go in is the left hand pipe. It goes through the other side, but before you put it in, it pays to just route that through there and then get the left hand O2 sensor ready, because you're going to assemble the two at once. Right, and while it's nice and free, screw that in there. That's the O2 sensor in. I can nip it up at the end, it's not important. It's just done up finger tight for now. And that's the idea of doing this at this stage, is you can route it exactly where you want to later on. You just pop it through, hold the plate in place. Now, when you assemble this first sort of little bit of pre-assembly, just do everything up really loose. Just put the nuts and bolts in place by hand. So all I'm doing is putting that on there, just finger loose. Don't obviously do anything up until you get to the point at the end, and there's an order in which you do it up so that nothing's pinched or pulling in the wrong direction and causing it to leak. So let's get these bolts in place. Can you see? There we are. So just do it up, barely finger tight, but leave it room to wiggle about. That's fine, that'll do. At a guess, I'd say you probably want, I don't know, about 3 mil of gap between the pipe and the gasket, just so it can wiggle about and we can set everything up and fit it all together. Now, there's a lambda sensor there, and all I'm going to do is think. Just use your brain really, you can just think of it yourself. There we are, look. Sits under there. So this is something you work out for yourself, it's not difficult. Take that through there. Now somebody emailed the other day and said they fitted these in and it ended up with one of the plugs too low down, kind of visible in place here. This is just a case of routing it. That's why you route it. That's why you undo all this, so you can move stuff around neatly and hide it out of the way. And that's what happens. You get this one here, because this sensor was over here on the left. When you fit it on this side, this wire is a little shorter than it might be, so it's going to show here. But the left hand plug is, just going to pop that in there so it's safe. Okay, pop the other one in. Factory sensor in first. Just finger tight. Put it in place. Okay, now part of the situation here is, as you can see, the two exhausts very attractively come down this side. That's their route, and you may well, obviously we've got all this adrift and the wiring's all being rerouted. That's, like I said, a job for your sort of common sense, and take your time doing that. But this is another issue here. This bottom union, it's kind of sticking out at 90 degrees, and that's a little bit in the way because it's right on this pipe bearing against it, but it's a slip union. So what I'm going to do, and this is in the instructions, so pop a 24mm socket on the bottom of that and just loosen it, just crack it off, as they say, and then move that union. Just doesn't, it's not full of oil or anything, so it won't leak. Move the union round just a little bit like that. It's flexible hose, and do it back up, and that'll allow you a little bit of breathing room. Okay, so after a little bit of fiddling around, I've routed all the sensor wires now, clipped them out of the way, and I've got that pipe mounted exactly equidistant between the exhaust and the frame. So it's going to be a nice, safe place for it to live. I'm just doing these back up, just so there's a little bit of room for it to move like the other one. Right, now we fit the intermediate pipe in the middle. Right, the next bit is the link pipe. It goes in the middle, and I want you to have a look in the end of that. You actually got a baffle in there, which is nice, because what that does is prevents echo. When you get a full tin exhaust that's got nothing in it, you do tend to get a lot of echo as the sound waves rattle down the pipe, bouncing outwards as they go. They're bouncing back on each other, and you do get a hollow, poppy echo sound. And that's what that little intermediary baffle, it's no more than probably 8mm thick, but it's there, it's enough to just absorb a little bit of that and send it on its way into the proper silencer. Okay, assembly. This is where yon silicon comes in. Now sometimes I've seen these where people use exhaust gasket paste. You can do that, but it's not as good as silicon. And just pop a little bit in each one like that, and just slide it round the inside as a good thick layer, and it will assist assembly, and at the same time it will seal it. A few people have said, doesn't it burn? No, it doesn't. It's a high temperature silicon, and once it's in the joint here, there's no oxygen in there anyway, because it seals, and as it's a complete seal, there is no, you know, as we all know, you need oxygen and heat and fuel to make fire. So if this was the fuel and the heat is the exhaust, you've got no oxygen, so because that's missing, it doesn't burn. Now a bit messy, but it all wipes off at the end. And this is just a little bit where it gets a tiny bit fiddly. You might need to have a little sense of humour with this, but you pop it on, lower one first, and just wriggle them in as far as they'll go manually. Give the exhaust a little move. This is why all this is loose up here, so everything just fits neatly together. And there we are, she's in. Now these little springs, now if you haven't got a spring toolie do, I made that, you can use a pair of grips, but I tend to use my good old hook thingy bob. All you do, pop that on there, oops, and they're in place nice and safe, don't come out, smack you in the teeth. There we go, top one, and that will just hold those in. That's all they need, and I think that's a method of connection that's on just about every one of the top branded exhausts, like a Kropovich and so on, and that will really hold it in place. They're a lovely slip fit, beautiful machine fit, that's slid in beautifully there, virtually no residue to speak of. Just wipe that off. Okay, now this little assembly here was what was holding the left hand silencer on. So you take that out of the silencer and you need it for this, and it simply goes in either side, and that forms the mount with that protruding thread going into this mounting on the frame. So just for now I'm going to take the bolt out itself and leave the rubbers in with that flush so that we can offer it up and it won't fall out. And the final one is at the back. This is what goes in your standard silencer. Again, that goes in the outside, and then when that's mounted inside there, you get those two that way round like that, and then the foot peg comes through the frame and mounts the whole lot in one go. So for now all we need is that mounted in the outside there. Right, so as before, big blob of silicone in there, just blob it in the mouth like that, and then wipe it round, get a good fit of it. Doesn't need to be thick, it'll just push out the way, because these exhausts have been like the other exhausts on the market that have got this kind of fitting system. They are quite a snug fit by design. They're very, very snug. They're not an interference fit, but they are enough that you don't need much. And as I said, don't go using that fire paste. That's more for car exhausts. This is, well, you can use it, it'll do the job, but it's not as good as this. There we are. So you've got a nice layer of the silicone around the inside, coating the whole inside of that tube. So when it mounts on there, it'll be nice and flush and sealed. Just offer it up. And that goes inside at the back, and then slide on. Literally, it slides on like silk, beautifully. There she is. That mounts in there. Now that's the major mount of the whole exhaust. Once that's in, just pop it in about 2 or 3 turns so it still moves around. And then you can put the final one at the back, which is, we've already got the bush in place. Peg goes that way up. Carefully does it not to bash the peg against the exhaust. That's it. Now I've done the sensors up, do up any fasteners that you've loosened on the oil cooler. Brackets back in. These are 9 Newton meters if you're interested, but I'm just put some copper slip on them and doing wrist tight with this screwdriver head socket thing, which is good enough, folks. That'll do the job. There we are, done up, done up. Okay, that's it. So once you've clipped all of the wiring away correctly, everything's a neat, tidy job, nothing's pulled. Make sure that none of the wires that you've moved, none of these sensor wires, have a little feel around, make sure they're not near a heat source. Same goes for this wire. Undid that 24mm banjo bolt, move that so it's equidistant between there, and that then runs down there. It's nowhere near the heat source, it's not going to cause any problems, and then retighten it back up. Now we're going to draw these up nice and evenly. The neighbours just shot each other. There we are. Now just jiggle it in with your hand, make sure that it's seated as well as it can be, and draw them up till they're just nipping. A little bit fiddly, there's a bit of a clearance issue in there, but you'll get a little quarter drive socket in like that quite neatly. And just draw them up till you feel them. There we go, just pressing, and that's not moving around. We'll torque it up in a minute. I'll give you the torque settings at the same time. Okay, do the other side. That's it. That's it. You're just drawing them in evenly. So alternate the socket either side, sort of half a dozen turns each side until it's nice and evenly drawn up in one go. and the new bushing, the new washer in there, the new gasket will crush up and seal beautifully. Next of all, tighten up the immediate pipe in the middle. Now this bracket here, this is a big heavy frame mount and it's got a proper steel lined bush in there, so you can just wind that up nice and tight. That's it. Now all this goes back into place now. This was just a simple single casting, so pop it back on, just a little bit of copper grease on that, bit of anti-seize, just to protect it, may as well. That's better, slides in beautifully, look at that, such a difference. Again, we'll mark these with the marker paint at the end because they're foot peg rests or foot peg hangers. Okay, when you put this back on, obviously that pushes it home, so don't do the clamp up first, do the side mountings into the frame rail up first, and once that's driven all the way home, you know that that's in its correct position, so you can just clamp it, and that's all that is. It's just a clamp that goes round the end of your swing arm shaft, swing arm pivot. That's it. Don't overdo it. That's it. That's all back in place, and that's that. Pop the casing back on, but before we do that, just going to do the back one up. Okay, this footrest mount underneath here, if you take these off, I just want to make a quick note. These are actually sided. You have the right one and the left one, and the easiest way to tell is the left one has the Triumph on the inside, the T, the right one's on the outside, but the easiest way is that that doesn't bear at the back. If you put the wrong one in there, then it will dent the exhaust, so just make sure it's the correct one. Once it's all drawn up nice and tight, just make sure you've got a bit of clearance underneath there by doing that with a cloth. Make sure you've got lots of clearance, and that if there's a load of weight on it, it's still got lots of clearance, and it's not going to, actually if I just do it properly, I don't want to get silicone all over it. So you put the cloth underneath it, just make sure that it moves freely like that, and that when you put weight on it, it still moves freely, and it's not bearing on the exhaust because it will dent it, and that will go on the other side. Right, last thing, put the casing on. These are the casing bolts. Obviously everybody, I'm going to imagine, who's worked on bikes over a few years has had a casing bolt snap off or seize up. So whenever you put steel into aluminium, there's a risk of a corrosion that sticks the two together, that white powdery stuff. Somebody clever could probably tell me what it's called, electrolytically something, but what it means is it stays in there, and once that sticks in there and snaps off, it just means loads of grief trying to get it out. And as these are little tiny 8mm, just do them up to 8 or 9 newtons, that's all you need. They don't need to be tight, they really don't. It's not a pressure casing. That's 8. There we are. For the OCD out there. There it is. That's it. Done. Okay, torquing these up to 18 Newton meters, which is the correct torque for these. But there's a little bit of a word to the wise for you, or a bit of a tip if it helps. When you're doing these up, they won't get tight like a normal bolt because you're crushing that washer in. There's one. So as you're squeezing that washer in, the bolt keeps, or the nut head keeps going in and in and in. It feels like you've cross-threaded it. There it is. That was 15 up to 18. There it is, a little bit more. Top one. Sometimes they go in a bit more on their own. There it is. Okay, that ensures they're drawn up and those washers are nicely pushed into place. Right, now I'm just going to clean it up. Something else that's quite important, once you've fitted one of these, get the tools and stuff out of the way. There's a little job to do on the left hand side with the side stand rubber, but before we do anything else, take a clean white cloth, and I'm using a spirit based degreaser, and the reason I do this on all new exhausts that I've ever fitted is that you've got greasy hands when you're doing it. There's the silicone and so on as well, and it just helps to get all the grease off the system before you start it up, because if you start it up and there's a big greasy fingerprint, that can go black and stain it quite badly. So just wipe the whole thing over before you do anything else with a good wipe of anything will do, terps, spirit. You can even use thinners, but there's no need because it's a bit aggressive. I just use glass cleaner there, and all it does is it degreases the exhaust, takes all your sticky prints off it, so that when you fire it up, the sudden heat doesn't turn them into little tattoos that last for years. And again, you can polish them off, but if you start polishing this finish, you'll get it shiny and it won't be that uniformed matte finish that you've currently got. So I'm going to clear all this up. One more little job the other side, then we can fire it up. Now the final job is on here where the sides stand. If you pop this up now, we see that you come down here, just take that out. Just come on down underneath and you'll see that when you put the stand up, it goes right up and it beats against the frame, because what used to stop here was a plate on your exhaust. So they supply two little rubbers to put in there, and I'll show you where they go. Okay, this area here, there's a little divot in there which is quite handy, and all I'm going to do is pass cable tie through there over the top and do it up, and that just puts a little piece of rubber tubing in that area like that, nice and tight. Clip that off, and then when you put the stand up, it doesn't, just rests on there nicely and doesn't clout anymore, and also it keeps it from being any more than upright. And they give you a couple of pieces so you can do it again. Now finally, there's this one bolt. This was the bolt that went into there. That's the frame mount for the old silencer. So rather than put that back in, which looks ridiculous, you don't need it in there, and rather than leave the thread open to the atmosphere, I've just got myself a little stainless button head 8mm, and I'm just going to pop it in with a bit of anti-seize on it, just to protect the inners of that thread for posterity, in case at any point I want to put a secondary exhaust on. And there's something on this side. There you go. And that may not go right home, but it fills the thread up, and that'll protect that nicely. There we go. Right, that is it. Time to run it up. And no fitting of an exhaust video would be complete.
It's much better.
Without a test
Love
run.
it.
Just run it slowly to start with, then it warms through again. That's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Sounds lovely.
And the feel of it, it's possible you'll get smoke coming off it, a little bit of steam here and there around the joint. You might get a little leak. And it might smoke off out the inside, just where it's manufacturing grease inside it. are. Just coming in, Ben. Sorry. This. Now you'll get a little discoloration. This is the silicone just vaporising the extra little bit that's on that outer edge. That will burn away and dry nicely. But this wonderful yellow,
look, matches my bike.
it's gone gold already. So that will normal. This discoloration is quite normal, and once the air clears in here a bit, I'll tell you a little bit more about the issue of the baffle and remapping, because that's very important. Okay, now finally the baffle. That's another one. I got two. That's the baffle that's inside. It's sealed on the end, empty like that, and it's got holes in the side. And that's what you're hearing now. That's what that sounds like in the back. Now, before you take that out and run it open, as most people would want to, and this is why we haven't done it today, you've got to remap the fuel injection. The standard map on the engine here is too lean to run this open, and you will get, it will run too hot and you'll end up with engine problems. Even if you cut this down and still run it, you'll end up with engine problems. And having to talk to George at TEC Bike Parts, he said that with the experience of the tuning they've done with these, to be honest, they run too lean as standard. You see the colour, the purple colour on the standard downpipes just goes to show that they really do run too lean, and that's a typical thing you get with bikes for emissions to get them sold all over the world. But if you take the bike to your Triumph dealer and get them to put the Arrow map, this pipe pretty much is an Arrow pipe. It's kind of a copy of the Arrow, with a slight difference that the Arrow is £715 and this is only £199. I haven't measured that yet. Put a link underneath as usual for the rest of this series, techbikeparts.com. £199, 200 quid folks, 200 quid for an all stainless 2-into-1 exhaust with a removable baffle which you can cut down. When I've got this remapped for Penny, I'm going to cut the baffle down to about 2 inches long, so it's got a nice sweet sound to it. They do sound a bit hollow and empty, and if you run them with the back end completely out, you get issues because there's a baffle in there and that needs to be there to hold it in. It's just a circlip thing going on. So as far as that, I only got a second one so I can show you it. I'm not going to run it without the baffle until we've had it remapped, and I would suggest for you the same folks, don't run your motor without the baffle in until you've had it remapped, and go to your Triumph dealer or do it yourself and put the Arrow map. That's the Arrow pipe that you get from your Triumph dealer, the one they charge over £700 for. The map for that is perfectly okay for this exhaust, and it will run beautifully with it. In fact, it will run very well with several exhausts, but for this one it'll be absolutely fine. And that gold colour, as you can see, is quite normal. It will discolour. That's acceptable and correct as it should be. As that's getting hot, that steel's discolour inside it, and it looks rather fabulous, I think. So there we are. TEC Bike Parts exhaust, 2-into-1. What do you reckon, Ben?
Very happy, lovely.
Tomorrow's a little test ride, and then we've got a few more little bits and pieces, little dress-up parts to do before she's done. But already, as you can see from the walk around outside, almost in the dark, she looks an awful lot better than the bike when it first turned up. Okay, there we are. Thanks for watching Delboy's Garage. Take it easy, ride safe. See you for the next one.